this chance to view the world from a different point of view, to laugh, to cry, to scream, together with people that you don't even know. And suddenly you realize your humanity. And I know that sounds a little, I like to say Pollyanna, but I really do believe this is the power of this industry. It's bigger than people think.
This is the Box Office Podcast. I'm Daniel Loria, the editorial director of Box Office Pro, the pulse of theatrical exhibition. And in this week's episode, I interview Molly Kreuzman, the program director of a new government initiative known as Ohio Goes to the Movies, something that the state government there put up for the America 250 celebration, showcasing films from people from Ohio, shot in Ohio, any connection in Ohio, back to the state moviegoers in local venues. That is coming up in the feature segment of this program, a great example of how government initiatives can work really well with exhibition when done correctly. But before we get there, we've got box office analysis to go over, a big update on the state AG pushback on the Paramount Warner Brothers merger, and our preview of Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey before its opening weekend. Joining me once again on the podcast is Rebecca Pahle and Chad Kennerk from Box Office Pro. Guys, welcome back to the show. A lot to go over here in terms of news, in terms of reactions. We've all been to the movies recently, but it doesn't seem like too many other people have for the start of July, because after a red-hot start to the year, those first 2 weeks of July have been brutal, one disappointment after another. But let's go over to what we have seen at the movies. Rebecca, you were one of the few people that went to go see Evil Dead Burn last weekend.
Yeah, I checked it out on Friday at the AMC Empire 25 in Times Square. It was a packed auditorium. Obviously it was the diehards going out. Really good crowd reaction. I mean, I saw the movie. I saw most of the movie because I spent a good chunk of it hiding behind my hands. It was it was very goopy. I really liked it a lot. I think I even liked it better than Evil Dead Rise. But yeah, the following day, I asked kind of a friend, a quasi acquaintance who's always into horror films. I don't know if you remember a year or two back, Blumhouse did this thing where they brought 5 of their older film. He went to that, so he's tuned in to the theatrical and the horror spaces. And I asked him if he saw it, and he said, "Nope. I forgot about it. No, I didn't remember it was out this weekend."
To be honest, that was a huge problem with his title.
Yeah, they didn't market it. No one marketed this thing.
That was our big concern. We were looking for film stills for this movie, Chad. We went to the official press site. I mean, barely anything there for us to just write about it and promote it for free. Not like we're getting any help from Warner Brothers to promote this title. We're doing this just as a service to exhibitors, as news. There's no advertising element at all. We can't even help sell this movie for free. That's clearly one of the things that went wrong here. We were expecting a $25 million opening weekend. Maybe a little bit more, honestly, maybe a ceiling of $30 million. It didn't even get halfway there, guys. $13 million, one of the biggest disappointments based on expectations of the year so far. Chad, I mean, you're also a big horror fan. I don't know how you felt about this, because I know you felt the same frustrations here as we were feeling, trying to get people a little bit excited or aware that this was coming out.
So all the studio press folks, we're on your side. We want to share these titles. Send us some stuff. There's nothing on the back end for Evil Dead Burn. At least there wasn't as of, late last week.
We used to have a lot more contacts and colleagues working studio PR at major studios. That has dropped significantly. And as journalists in this space, we've seen colleagues come in and out of this area. A lot of people can't make a living doing this. Studio investment in helping market these movies and publications has also gone down. You see it in results like this. This is where you see the impact of that cost cutting. So it's not just us piling on here on Warner Brothers. I think every studio is complicit of investing less on PR resources and investing less in publications to get the word out there. Like I'm saying, we're just doing this regardless of any investment whatsoever from Warner Brothers. It's $0, by the way, the support we're getting from that studio. We're doing this because we're part of the industry on the exhibition side. We're trying to promote this movie. We're trying to help exhibitors, but there was nothing, literally nothing for us to pull from the official press page when it came down to it. If they're not willing to put in the work and they're not willing to invest in it, we've just seen from audiences, they're just simply not willing to show up. And that's a pity because as Rebecca said, it's a good movie.
It's a good horror movie in a year when horror movies have been doing really well. It's obviously one of the most marketable cinema friendly genres. It's the sort of thing you want to see on a big screen with a lot of people. That said, I mean, this lack of effort of resources being put into reaching the public on some of these movies. It's not every film, because I was seeing Moana posters on the subway all over the place. I was seeing Dwayne Johnson's pecs everywhere these last couple weeks, and
new head of hair. That was what pulled me out of it from all that advertising. Just robust hair from our friend Dwayne The Rock.
Luxuriant, really. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, shampoo commercial hair. That's the quality we're talking about. Yeah, nobody ended up showing up to Moana either. And this is something that we called. I mean, we whiffed on our Evil Dead forecast. We thought it was going to open to 25 plus. It ended up making 13 on opening weekend. Again, a really disappointing figure. But we expected a soft debut for Moana, which had not been tracking well at all in the weeks leading up to release. We thought the floor was going to be $45 million. It gets just shy of that, opens to $43 million, more or less a little bit below the opening weekend of Tim Burton's Dumbo, which ended up legging out to $114 million domestically. That is where we expect this movie to end up, around 110, 120, in that range. Unfortunately, Moana ended up making less on its opening weekend than the Thanksgiving opening day Wednesday of Moana 2 did back in its theatrical premiere a couple years back.
Thanksgiving, that one day.
Yeah. So that one day, Thanksgiving Wednesday, which is admittedly one of the busier movie-going days of the year, on one day, Moana 2 made $57 million in its opening day on Wednesday. The entire opening weekend in the middle of the summer for live-action Moana ended up making $43 million.
It's so bizarre, because I mean the Evil Dead burn, that was not a problem with. I mean, that was Warner Brothers shooting themselves in the foot with regards to the follow through on the movie and the marketing and the press. And Moana, it just kind of feels like it was ill advised from the get-go.
No, this is a huge disappointment in terms of the live action performances for Disney. We could see it coming. We'd been saying this for weeks. Get ready for it. I think the big surprise that we were faced with is we were really expecting the Evil Dead anthology sequel to help balance the weekend out. When all is said and done, it was still a $100 million plus weekend that exhibition was able to enjoy, the 12th consecutive frame above the $100 million benchmark. We are going to hit the 13th consecutive $100 million weekend, because right now we are approaching what looks like to be a $100 million debut for Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. We're going to recap it extensively in next week's episode. But Chad, you already saw it in its press screening this last week. Rebecca and I are watching it commercially, but we want to hear just with no spoilers, just your quick reaction to seeing The Odyssey before audiences got to experience it.
Yeah. Well, I have to say it's a real privilege to have seen it in 70 millimeter in IMAX. So it was a real treat. And I think it definitely did not disappoint. I think Nolan is continuing to prove that he's one of our greatest storytellers. And it is a familiar tale. It's a familiar story if you know the book. I was captivated by it in high school. And so I, even from then, remembered a lot of the elements of it. So it maybe isn't as mind-blowing as Interstellar or Inception, but certainly impressive on every level.
I won't have to kind of be, trying to think through the movie like Interstellar. What's going on here? Like the Odyssey, right. You can just kind of, sounds like sit back and enjoy the spectacle.
And I mean, this is probably as brisk as I've ever seen Nolan. Like he's like, hey, here's the story, keep up, we're going in. Like I got 3 hours to tell the story, let's go.
I wanted to hear that. We need that sometimes from Chris Nolan. You can't deny that he's a great showman. He really knows how to fill that frame.
He's old school. He's like an old school
There's a
Hollywood.
sense of
And
scale in his movies. Even in
Yeah.
Oppenheimer, there's this great sense of scale in everything
Yeah.
he does. So to watch a literal epic on the big screen, I'm excited to see it. Obviously, that's coming out this weekend wide here in North America and in many markets around the world. We are expecting $100 million opening weekend for the title. Maybe it can fall a little bit shy. That can happen sometimes when a lot of that demand is concentrated on premium formats. In this case, specifically one premium format, which is IMAX.
You're seeing it a little bit further on down the line, just because trying to get
Yeah.
into that 70 millimeter in it was
Well, I
impossible
wanted to make sure I
do.
had a ticket for that. So I have that ticket in early August, which is the only time I could find one at the AMC Lincoln Square in New York City. But I am going to catch it at some point before we have the conversation in next week's podcast, probably in some sort of standard format. There's going to be plenty of screenings with actually a lot of availabilities. What we've seen as we track the ticket sales here, yes, those IMAX 70 screenings have been sold out for a year plus at this time, but other premium formats, you can find a lot of availability there, and a lot of standard auditoriums still have a lot of occupancy freed up for this title. So that's why we are expecting a massive opening weekend here on the premium basis. But when you look at the market overall, it's not going to be something significantly higher from 100 million that we're expecting, unless that word of mouth comes in and people just start buying things in the walk-up basis. I think a lot of demand is going to be spread over week 2, week 3, week 4, and week 5, like my own premium format ticket, as people prioritize a specific premium experience for this movie. And that includes, by the way, 70 millimeter showings, which I think are a great way for art houses to get in on the premium format conversation without having to invest in, let's say, a third-party company or give up a portion of their ticket sales or surrender their marketing. 70 millimeter is really just exploding more and more and more in this PLF conversation, which I think is great. It's one of those inclusive formats as we look forward. I did go to the movies last weekend, but it wasn't to see anything in the top 5. It was to see a movie that has been in limited release for the first 2 weeks. I believe it's been 2 weeks. I'm talking about Olivia Wilde's The Invite from A24. Found its wide expansion this last weekend. Broke into the top 10 in 6th place with $5.7 million. It's a
I've
great...
heard nothing but good things. Like I've seen raves about it.
I think you guys would dig it. I mean, it's one of those movies that makes sense in the context of a filmmaker's career. After the great word of mouth from Booksmart that happened pre-pandemic, I think that was an Annapurna title, a lot of folks were excited to see where her career would go. She goes from the Megan Ellison distributor studio to Warner Brothers to make Don't Worry, Darling. And that movie, unfortunately, I don't think it was a bad movie, by the way. I don't think it was a fiasco, but the press tour was a fiasco.
Yeah.
There was a PR fiasco. The movie itself, I think it's unfairly criticized. There's a lot of things that don't work in that movie, by the way.
There are a lot of things. There are things that are good in it, but it just didn't.
Yeah, it's not a disaster. The movie's okay, maybe too not great, but it's not a disaster. The press tour was a disaster, however, and I think that unfairly maybe hindered the career of a filmmaker like Olivia Wilde as a director, where you really were wondering when the next opportunity was going to come, how it was going to come. Lo and behold, Megan Ellison, who, as we mentioned, was part of the producing team that brought out her first film, is back as a producer with Olivia Wilde's next film, with The Invite. This is as close to a stage play as you can imagine, on a big screen, one setting, indoor set, an apartment with 4 characters, takes place over a dinner. I had a really good time watching it. It's the sort of film that doesn't get out to the movies very often. And for me, it was a very refreshing watch. Even if I didn't connect with it all the way, you don't see these movies made very often today. And it's a great date movie for adults. And so often we look at female filmmakers and say, well, when is she going to have an opportunity to make a superhero movie? As if that's really the
as if
test of success in this industry.
Like
which
Nancy
is
Meyer's career is going to be validated when she gets to direct a superhero movie. Finally.
Yeah, like how? When did we start thinking about filmmakers' career in terms of maybe they'll give them a Marvel or DC movie at some point, and then we know they're an established filmmaker? No,
To
we
be
don't.
fair, I think that's definitely dropped off a little bit with the sort of fallow period that the MCU and Star Wars have
I would
entered
hope
into.
so. I would hope so. And not everything has to be. I love Kelly Reichardt. I love her films. I love Deborah Granick. I love her work. Not everything has to be that challenging, right? Not everything, and I don't think it's that challenging, but it's niche. We can say that Deborah Granick's work, Kelly Reichardt's work, I think two of the greatest American directors, period. Forget, any asterisk I'm going to put there. Two of the best American filmmakers working in this generation. I love their work, but I understand it's not multiplex cinema, which is fine. It's okay. Now, you don't need to be in that end of the conversation either. You can be somewhere in between. And I think that's where Olivia Wilde is finding a really good niche. And I love the fact that after a misstep in her career, she gets an assignment that she can direct the heck out of. And that's what she does with this. It's a very, very, very well-directed movie because it's tricky to have four characters in one indoor set the entire time and make it visually engaging. Guys, the framing in this film is wonderful. She really thought through every single shot composition. So visually, it's one of the most interesting movies of the year, and that's not something you expect to see out of four actors having dinner inside an apartment for 2 hours. But I think that was my reaction to the film. I recommend it, even though I didn't love it. And I really hope more people start coming out to this title. Great career decision from Olivia Wilde to say, hey, let's get a really good script and let's make a really good movie that's not going to be too expensive to market. Let's just make it. Let's make a little bit of money for the distributor and let's move on. I think she aced this assignment.
Speaking of that family who is having an outsized impact on the entertainment industry globally, we have had a lawsuit filed by 12 states to block the Paramount Warner Brothers merger. Guys, what do you think about this?
I think this is the big news coming into this week, right? Which honestly is something we expected. I think a lot of the antitrust reviews, not only here in the US, but internationally, have cleared the way for Paramount to finish this acquisition. It looks to be, or at least it looked to be on track to finalize before that, I think late September, early October penalty that Paramount has to pay to WBD shareholders in case this gets delayed. It looked to be fast-tracked. Wait until 12 state AGs sued to block it. And that's exactly what happened. From my understanding, based on the reading I've done around this, 12 state attorney generals led by California's Rob Bonta, with a number of other influential states, including New York, where obviously a big part of the entertainment industry is located. They came together to file a lawsuit hoping to block this merger. I'm not sure there's enough evidence from what I've read for this to be a successful lawsuit, for this merger to break up. There's been a lot of traction for this to go through in other countries, including by the DOJ in general here in the United States. But at the very least, this will likely slow it down, and I don't know how much it will slow it down. I don't know if it ever gets to be too expensive in terms of that financial penalty that Skydance is going to have to pay Warner Brothers Discovery shareholders if it's not closed by the end of September. I don't know if there's an end to the seemingly limitless amount of money that there is behind this bid, but at least there is some sort of pushback to this, which we really haven't seen either in the US or internationally. But at least we've heard from Cinema United in applauding the 12 state attorney generals for their request to take a little bit longer to make sure that this isn't going to damage the industry for generations to come. Michael O'Leary, the head of Cinema United, saying in a statement, quote, "We welcome the decision of the attorney general of multiple states to challenge the proposed acquisitions of Warner Brothers Studios. The ramifications of further movie studio consolidation will be significant and lasting, not just in Hollywood, but on main streets across this nation where local movie theaters serve as cultural and financial cornerstones for communities of all sizes." That's a quote from Michael O'Leary, the head of Cinema United, the exhibition trade group. So, guys, we don't know where this is going to end up. It's probably going to take at least longer than what Paramount Skydance wanted it to take. But again, there's so much money and investment riding behind this bid that the resolution, I wouldn't put all our eggs in the state AG's basket. Unfortunately, I don't think there's anything coming in behind it to stop it.
I wonder if the midterms are going to have any effect at all on the movement on this, or slowing the movement. We'll have to see on that one.
It feels like a freight train. Honestly, that's what this acquisition feels like. It feels like a freight train that has been very haphazardly and hastily just put forward and through the DOJ review.
Instead of coal, they're shoveling into the steam engine. It's just gobs and gobs and gobs of money.
Just money getting thrown in there, right, into that furnace. Yeah, it's been surprising to watch this go through this quickly, but at the very least, we have 12 state AGs that are coming together to sue. At the very least, like I mentioned, I think this is going to be an injunction to slow things down, but ultimately, I'm not sure if it will be enough based on the evidence that's out there to make a significant difference here on this merger closing. And Exhibition is going to have to adapt. We've been saying this for many, many months, even dating back to when Netflix was going to be the winning bid behind this acquisition. Ultimately, it'll be a radically different industry once the combined entity of Warner Brothers Paramount, if they do end up merging, comes to fruition at some point in 2027 or early 2028. And that pretty much wraps up our news segment this week, guys. We've got here after the break an example of positive government involvement in Exhibition, which is a nice thing to say after the pandemic and after this merger drama that we've been going through. Feels like forever, honestly. But there are examples of the government coming together with Exhibition, working together and making a real difference, not only for their local communities, but for theater owners. That's exactly what happened in the state of Ohio, dating back to this February with Ohio Goes to the Movies, an initiative that is enabling not only cinemas, but also venues in places where there are no cinemas currently to bring movies from the state of Ohio. That's movies either shot or featuring people somehow involved with the state of Ohio, or featuring locations from Ohio itself, set in the state of Ohio. Any Ohio location makes the film eligible for these series of screenings and events that have been happening in different cities and communities in the state since February. It's going to go through the month of October. It's a great initiative that found funding to pay some of these theaters a small stipend, to put on these events for the community. I love everything behind it. I don't want to spoil too much about it, but the program director joins us after the break. That is Molly Kreuzman, the head of Ohio Goes to the Movies, to explain what this initiative is, how it came into fruition, and hopefully we can find some sort of traction to see other states buy into this concept. Because again, after the pandemic, the relationship between governors, between state governments, and Exhibition was fraught, to say the very least. We saw a big stress test in those government relations in some cases. This initiative is a great repair attempt and a great example of how governments and Exhibition can work together for the betterment of their communities. My interview with Molly Kreuzman from Ohio Goes to the Movies is coming up after this break.
The Box Office Blue Ribbon recognizes excellence in the movie-going experience for newly built or renovated cinemas across 4 metrics: design, technology, hospitality, and community engagement. Thank you to our sponsors, Barco, Luma 4D Motion, and ICTA, the International Cinema Technology Association. We look forward to welcoming additional circuits and cinemas to future editions of this initiative. Any cinema worldwide can submit any of its locations that opened or were renovated since 2020 for consideration. To see this year's honorees, please visit boxofficepro.com/blue-ribbon.
And we are back here on the Box Office podcast with our guest this week, Molly Kreuzman, the director of Ohio Goes to the Movies, a great initiative that is happening over this anniversary year here in the United States, celebrating its 250th anniversary as a nation. Molly joins us to talk everything about this great initiative that I can't remember if I've ever seen something like this in the United States before. Molly, welcome to the podcast. Let's get right into it. Can you just go over what this concept is, Ohio Goes to the Movies, and then we'll go over how this idea came to fruition?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on your show today. I'm excited to be with everyone. So, Ohio Goes to the Movies was the brainchild of a man named Stephen George, who was in charge of the Ohio Bicentennial. And what he found in 2003 as he was traveling around the state were how many people wanted to talk about movie stars that came from their little town, or a film that was made there, or an animator who came from their town, or just anything to do with the movies. And at that time, he didn't have the bandwidth to add that on to everything else he was doing. So when America 250 Ohio formed, he realized this was the place to put it. And I was invited to coffee by the head of our Ohio Arts Council, Donna Collins. And I got there, and Stephen was there. And about 15 minutes into this coffee, I said to myself, this is some kind of a job interview, and I don't even know what it is for. And so after 4 more interviews, which actually ended with an interview at the governor's mansion, which was daunting to say the least, I was hired. Now, I was originally hired to do 30 to 40 events, but I don't follow directions well. So we're at 320 some Ohio-centric films that we were showing. So what does this have to do with America 250? So, in this semi-quincentennial celebratory year, every state is being asked to celebrate things that they brought to the fabric of America. And as I started getting into this and researching and really digging in, I am now willing to say that outside of California, I believe Ohio has had more to do with the movies than any other single state in the country. It is fascinating what I have learned.
I just want to go over how the entire organization of Ohio Goes to the Movies works. What are the components of it? Say, for your regular resident going their day-to-day lives in the state of Ohio, when did it start? How long does it expand to? And what does it include?
I am the director and I have a program coordinator. And then I have a really great sort of outside team. So I actually have 2 marketing PR firms that are helping me, one in the northern half of the state, one in the southern half of the state. And so when I started this, I like to say I was building the plane as I was flying it because nobody's ever done anything like this before. And I was given some money by the state, and also we've had private donors. So I started with thinking about what did I want these events to look like, because I wanted every one of these screenings to be an event. Now, again, remembering I was starting with 30 to 40. So I decided some kind of a pre-gathering, and it could be anything from trivia to just the special cocktails to red carpet. You could go as big as you wanted. That's the pre-gathering, and then there is the screening, and
Okay.
then afterwards, I wanted there to be an audience participation Q&A so that everybody in the theater felt involved in what was happening. And so I created stipends for each of our theaters, because the other thing, and I pushed for this very hard, was I wanted every single one of these to be free and open to the public. But I didn't want the theaters to suffer because they weren't getting the ticket revenue.
Mhm.
So we set up a stipend, and everybody has to apply, and you have to follow all the state rules, which, let me tell you, yours truly has never worked for the state before. So I have learned all about rules. Um, but what I found was, as I started going out to venues, just everybody got so excited about this and everybody wanted to be involved. So again, we now have well over 250 venues that are involved. We started with theaters, historic theaters, and drive-ins. We have since added, because a lot of our counties no longer have movie theaters.
Mm.
And so we next reached out to libraries, and the libraries instantly jumped on board. Just fantastic partners. And just as a side note, a really cool thing is AMC Theaters said, we would like to do something for all your libraries that are helping out. And so they are actually sending each of the libraries enough popcorn for all their guests that are coming to the movies.
That's
Which is
great to
just,
hear.
I mean, it's super cool. This is how everybody is working together. It is absolutely phenomenal. So then we reached out to, we have museums involved, we have music venues, we have swimming pools, we have parks and recs, we have, I mean, you can't believe people are showing films everywhere. It's absolutely incredible. So this kicked off February 11th in Milan, Ohio, which is the home of Thomas Edison, who had a little something to do with the movies. Our culminating event, our grand finale, if you will be October 14th, and we will be showing the movie 42 about Jackie Robinson. And again, every single film has to have a tie to Ohio. So let's move back again to the beginning. So the first thing was, I didn't even have a list of all the theaters in the state. So I had to start there. And I reached out to a friend that works at the State House. He's a lobbyist for the MPA, and for Cinema United. And so he was able to help put together the very first list of venues for me. And then from there, the next thing was we needed to put together an Ohio movie database. And that's when, I mean, the light bulbs just kept going on and going on and going on as we added more and more people to this database. I will tell you, when we first published it online, and it is online, I made sure all of this is free and open to the public. Um, we we published it with a form that folks could fill out for people or things that we had missed. We had over 1,000 forms returned from
Wow.
people around the state. It was absolutely extraordinary. And it continues to this day of people reaching out saying, oh, did you know about blah, blah, blah? And, you know, so if we talk about the beginning of film in Ohio, so we've said Thomas Edison. Next, we could go to Lillian Gish, Clark Gable, Doris Day, Paul Newman, Dorothy Dandridge. I mean, the great actors. Then we also look at the Warner Brothers, who are, they were from Youngstown and one of the first studios. Then there's a woman named Daida Beveridge, who is from a little town called Hicksville, Ohio. And she and her, I believe, second husband bought 120 acres of land in Southern California, and they named it Hollywood, and they started laying out a town there, which is the very Hollywood we know today. So, I mean, it's just these kinds of extraordinary people and things that we just keep finding, and it's just been incredible.
Now, when did the event start, and what was your kickoff event to this fantastic initiative?
So our kickoff event was February 11th, and again, we did it in Milan, Ohio, at the birthplace of Thomas Edison. And actually, Todd Halstead from Cinema United came out, so we had folks from the national level that came out. The governor was there. It was a wonderful, wonderful event. Beverly D'Angelo came. She had really fun words to share, and we showed some of the very first films ever made by Edison's company, including Frankenstein, which was just fantastic. And again, people were enthralled. We've shown over 150 movies so far. We're about halfway through. I know we still have, well over 150 left to go. Our final screening will be in Delaware at the Strand Theater on October 14th. It is going to be such a cool event on so many levels because, in a way, 42 is a story about the best of America, and there's some of the worst of America in it also. But one of the things, and this is, I get a little teary-eyed because one of the things that has been so extraordinary for me about this job, and this is by far the best job I've ever had in my life, is I have the opportunity to not only help theaters and help filmmakers and all that kind of thing, but we get to bring communities back together around movies which take us out of our everyday life, give us the opportunity to, I often refer to the Shawshank Redemption. If somebody told you that you were going to feel a kinship with these prisoners and you'd never seen the film, you wouldn't get that. It would not make sense to you. But you watch that film, and by the end of it, you do feel for these characters and you do have empathy for these characters. And so this project has given us the opportunity to bring communities back together and to remind us of what brings us joy and that we have more in common than we don't have in common. And to get to do that at this particular time in the universe is an extraordinary opportunity. And I am just thankful for it every single day. So,
what moments are you going to look back on and say, I'm going to remember that forever?
once this started, gaining traction and we started adding more and more venues, originally I was going to program the films, and then I thought, well, that is awfully self-important of me to think that I know what these, folks in all these different communities want to watch. That's just not right. So I immediately turned that over to the venues. So they pick films that are important to their community. And a lot of these films, again, we just went to Air Force One up in a town called Minter, which is up by Lake Erie. Most folks don't know that most of Air Force One was filmed in Ohio. The opening scene where they parachute, they actually parachuted after dark onto the roof of Playhouse Square in Cleveland. They used Rickenbacker Air Force Base for the airport scenes because it was the only one big enough and open to, be able to bring the plane into. And the prison, the Soviet prison that's shown in there is once again the Ohio Reformatory, which is also in the Shawshank Redemption. So all of that was really fun. But the coolest thing was we happened to have in Ohio one of the only stunt companies between New York and LA. And so a bunch of the stunt guys that worked on this came to the film. And then during the opening, the guy who runs the stunt company said, "So would you guys like to see how stunts are done and how they work?" And we're all like, "Yeah." And so all of a sudden, this couple comes down the aisle and they're like having this big argument, and everybody's kind of like, what's going on? And then this guy in the audience jumps up and runs over and goes, "Hey, man, you can't talk to her like that. Kapowie!" And then they had stunt people all over the audience, and they're like flinging each other over chairs. And it was, it was incredible. It was so fun. So things like that are amazing. And then there's really heartfelt things. Like we just showed The Butler at the Ohio Theater in Columbus. And The Butler happened from an article written by a brilliant writer named Will Haygood. And that, article sparked the making of the film because Lee Daniels read the article and he got interested. And what a lot of folks don't know is that film was turned down by every single studio. There was no studio that thought that people would ever want to see The Butler. It has now gone on to show in 72 countries. And what was really beautiful was Lee Daniels made just the most heartfelt introduction video. And it was so cool because he said, "You know what? I'm going to go watch this because it's Juneteenth and I don't watch my films, but I'm going to go watch this today because I deserve to watch this." And it was just, everybody was so excited about that. So that was really amazing. And then the last one, and I could go on and on, but there's a little town called Hillsboro. It's a very small town. They ended up showing their film over top of a coffee shop and then community gathering space. And they showed Despicable Me. Now, what is a tie with Despicable Me to Ohio? Well, again, I had to make a lot of decisions about, like what makes you an Ohioan. So I decided the rule was either you were born here or you lived here for more than 3 years. And it just so happens that Steve Carell went to Denison University.
Oh, there you go.
So
That's your four. Wonderful.
we got to count Steve Carell. So they showed Despicable Me, and all the little kids that were there dressed up as minions. And I just lost my entire mind. It was the cutest thing. And it was so joyful. And again, I can't overspeak how joyful these events are and how much people really love being back in the theater, and how many young people have come up to me and said, I'd never seen a movie in a theater. It's amazing. And I said, yes, it's an entirely different experience than watching it on your computer or watching it on your phone. To see a film in a theater the way it was meant to be seen, there's just nothing like it.
Can you talk a little bit about getting those venues involved and turning that page together with those representatives?
I have to say that right at the top of all of this, our number one cheerleaders, without a doubt, are Governor Mike DeWine and First Lady Fran DeWine. They absolutely love the movies. Now, this is a hilarious story that the governor loves to tell, but his first date with Fran was when they were 16 and he had gotten a new car, and he lived in a town called Yellow Springs, which has the little art house theater, and he invited her to a movie. And then he tells you what the movie is, which is Whatever Happened to Baby Jane.
That's an interesting first. I'm glad there was a second one. That's all I'm going to say about that.
I mean, so we're all like, sir, what on earth? And he goes, I didn't know what it was. I just knew she said yes. So to her credit, yes, she said yes. And they've been together for over 50 years. So, but they have championed this absolutely. And then, this was bipartisan. This was bipartisan that Ohio Goes to the Movies would happen as part of America 250. And it just doesn't matter. We leave that at the door because, again, it's about community. It's bigger than politics. It's remembering who your neighbors are and, becoming friends again and all these things that are so important. And the movies are such an incredible vehicle for this. This is replicable in other places. I don't believe on this scale, again, because this, we only have one semi-quincentennial. One of the things that I talked about is that we cannot forget that movies are a circular industry. Without theaters, there's not a community space to see movies. There's not the big screen. There's not the surround sound. Yes, you can get some of that at home, but it's a different experience altogether.
It's not the same. It's not the same at all.
It's not the same. I do talk a lot to people about the fact that film sets are one of the most democratic places you can ever be, because you have everybody from high school dropout to PhD, and they all work on the set, and everybody knows the beautiful choreography of a set and the hierarchy, and no one is less than and no one is more than. Maybe the director gets to be chief, but other than that, without everybody doing their part, a movie doesn't get made. It's this circular industry. And if one part of this industry collapses, or if one part of this industry gets greedy, that circle flattens and it doesn't roll. And then we all suffer. We all suffer. And so I think it's incredibly important for everyone to remember that we all have to work together to keep this industry alive and to create these incredible experiences for people that give them, this hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours, depending on the director, possibly more, but this escape, this chance to view the world from a different point of view, to laugh, to cry, to scream, together with people that you don't even know. And suddenly you realize your humanity. And I know that sounds a little, I like to say Pollyanna, but I really do believe this is the power of this industry. It's bigger than people think.
And I would love to see this replicated. As you mentioned, maybe not to the same scale in terms of it being possible to be replicated by other states, other countries, other regions. I think that would be wonderful. But I think the potential is there to come in and work together, because I think the key distinction here in terms of, let's say, cinema venues and their relationship with government is when we can all come to the understanding that, especially with a film, that a depiction of something is not an endorsement of something.
That's right.
Watching something doesn't mean you are bending towards an ideology or promoting any sort of thing. It is simply just showing you something that you might not be prepared to see, something new, maybe something familiar that feels comfortable, but it's an engagement with something outside of yourself in the presence of others. That's the power we have as a medium. And that's why it's so important to have a diversity of film and voices to engage with. The anecdote you just told me about the governor and his wife, their first date, going to see something like whatever happened to Baby Jane, that's a perfect example of the power that this industry brings. You're not endorsing what you're seeing on screen. You're engaging with it. You're questioning what you're seeing and maybe your own opinions and your own perspectives. That is what we have as a medium. And to see the government and the business community in our industry come together and endorse that and encourage that, especially off the back of a very difficult period that I think a lot of states and businesses went through at a global level. I think there's a lot of cinema owners all over the world that would greatly benefit of taking the partisanship aside and just saying, hey, this is the sort of activity that helps the business life in our community, helps the social cultural life in our lives. And I absolutely love to see it. A huge congratulations to yourself and the team behind Ohio Goes to the Movies. And I can't wait to see the upcoming events you guys have through October.
This is why we do Q&As afterwards so people can talk about it. But, it also shows us where we've been and where we are. And so, it's not one-dimensional by any means. So thank you again. Truly been my absolute honor to get to lead this endeavor. And who knows? I'll be wandering around in 2027. So if folks are interested in doing this, I am more than happy to help them make it happen.
Well, thank you so much, Molly. You can find a lot more information on this initiative over at their website, ohiogoestothemovies.org. Molly Kreuzman, thank you so much for joining us here on the Box Office Podcast. And a huge thank you to Molly Kreuzman from Ohio Goes to the Movies for joining us on this week's episode. More information on the initiative is available at ohiogoestothemovies.org. We'll be back with a new episode of the Box Office Podcast next week when we recap everything about Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. So don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review if you like what we're doing. And we will talk to you again next week.